want to? I mean,
Either way.
I'll do it and then I'll hand it over.
Okay, good.
Yes. Okay.
Actually, can I share your agenda? I thought
Yes.
it would be
Here's the fire map from today.
great. Okay.
Are we good?
Yes.
All right. Okay. It is 5:32. Are we ready? Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope everyone had carrot cake in honor of Steve's serving on the commission. The end of your, second term?
Second term, right, 8 years, 3 months actually, because I fulfilled a partial term at the end of the last fellow, so.
Okay. And I know you can serve 10 years, so yes. So that's good to hear. So why don't we have everyone introduce themselves, and then I'll turn it over to Jessica. Go ahead,
I'll
Steve.
start. Steve Swisher, the Sisters Area representative for the Planning Commission, and I'll be finishing July 1st, 2 full terms and a few months and another partial term, I hope. It's been an extraordinary year to have worked with the county and the various commissioners over time, and appreciated the opportunity.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much for representing the Sisters Area on the Planning Commission all these years, Steve. Hi, everyone. Bill Chang, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Dale Crawford. I'm finishing up my 7th year on the Planning Commission. I don't know where it's went, but it's went quick. Live in Terrebonne, Commissioner at Large, but kind of represent that northern portion of the county. So, and as another little tidbit, I am a true Deschutes County native, being born and raised in Manly.
I'm Susan Altman, Planning Commissioner. This is my first term. I've been here for 2 years, and I represent Bend. I'm the second Bend person, and I'm sort of unincorporated Bend area.
I'm Nick Lelak, Deschutes County Administrator, and I'm completing my 9th month
Oh,
in this new position, so thank you.
that's exciting. 9 months, huh?
Okay, I can top that. Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director, and I think I just completed my eighth month in this position. So for some reason, there was a vacancy at the director position, provided this opportunity. So great to be here.
Thank you.
Tony Williams, I represent the South County, and I am in my first year of my first term. I think I'm on month 10, having got appointed in August.
There you go.
Tony DeBone, Deschutes County Commissioner. Thank you very much. This is our joint meeting tonight. It's a great opportunity for us to all see each other. We do the individual appointments, and we see you once in a while, but it's good to be at the table with everybody. And thank you, Steve, for your service for those 8 years and 3 months.
I'm Nathan Hofkamp with the Deschutes County Planning Commission, and I'm one of the at-large reps. I'm happy to be here and happy to be with you all. Jessica.
Hi, I am Jessica Kieris. I am the current chair of the Planning Commission, and I also represent the Redmond area as the representative from that area of the county. In terms of the Planning Commission, I think you guys mostly know what we do, but in case there's anyone out there that doesn't, we are the citizen involvement arm or committee, and we provide recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. So tonight's the joint meeting, and so we get to all talk together, which is not something we get to do very often.
I know, I'm trying to think, when was the last one? Does anyone remember?
2 years ago.
Was it 2?
Yeah, 19.
Yeah.
February
Okay.
of 2020.
Yeah.
February
Right.
20, of course it was, wasn't it? Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. So, who are we going to call on? What? Public comments. Is anyone in the public going to comment tonight, for the record? Do we see anything, any hands raised on Zoom?
Yep. My name is Tony Partain, and I have an amateur radio station. And Peter, how you doing, Peter?
It's good to see you. Likewise.
Tony.
Yep.
I went I did a little research. You know, I have a tower. I have a 55-foot tower on my property. And I put the tower up. I did a little research first and figured out I did not need a permit. And one of my neighbors turned me in. Let the fun begin. So I got a code enforcement letter. And after going through the process with the county, there are a couple things that could be streamlined in the code. Some of the wording is directed towards cell towers and towers over 200 feet tall. And amateur radio facilities in the state of Oregon, anything under 70 feet is not required for a permit. And there's also a couple of other items in here too that could be streamlined as far as the code asks for compliance, a written compliance from the FCC, the FAA, and the ODA, Oregon Department of Aviation. Well, the FCC really doesn't care about amateur towers. They are not going to give you written compliance. The FAA does not worry about towers under 200 feet or unless they're in the airport overlay zone. And the ODA, same thing with the FAA. So I would like to work with the county to try to streamline the code to make it easier for the county and for the people involved getting permits for towers. And Peter, thank you for your help. I think you got into this a little late. Sounds like if you've only been, what, 8 or 9 months now, you must have just started when I started working on you. And my apologies for the way that all went, but it took 6 months for me to get this thing, to get the code enforcement off my property. And there were many, many man hours put out by the county that did not need to be put out. It put me through 6 months of basically me trying to show the county that I was in compliance. And I don't know how many man hours you guys put into it, but it was more than necessary. So I'd like to help out, try to get this streamlined in the future. And if I can work with Mr. Groves on this, if he's going to be a part of that, I would love to do it.
He's raising his hand behind you.
He puts it in perspective.
We had some great conversations on the phone, and Mr. Groves cannot be rattled. I have to hand him that, because I did work on him after, because I called, you know, in 3 months, it went on 3 months, it went on 6 months, and at the 6-month mark, I got a little upset and started pushing some buttons. And Mr. Groves, you guys need to hang on to him.
There you go.
Oh, do you mind giving us the address, just for the record?
Sure, 60610 Drover Way, and it's out in Conestoga Hills.
So one other note, I thought to contact Mr. Partain before this and say, oh, here's your opportunity to come say hi to everybody. This is an item like on the other projects to-do list in the work plan. So this puts it in perspective how that got there and why that got there. You know, there's a height for amateur and there's height for cell towers, and that maybe there's a way to optimize this situation. And so that puts it in perspective how that and why that got there on our work plan.
It fits another issue that we're working on too. There's a bit of a loophole for right-of-ways with ODOT property that I believe the county's going to be talking about this summer. So, yeah.
Cool, yeah. And the other thing too that I wasn't real happy with was, let's see, it's the informal determination was applied to this, and which basically forced me into getting a land review. The $95 is trivial. I don't think I don't have a problem with that at all. But if you don't need a permit, why do you need a land review? And I requested written and verbally to probably 3 or 4 different people along the way, and I never got a determination on it. I never found anything in the code that required that I had to have a land review. So I would like to have that clarified too.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for your testimony.
Perfect. Look forward to working with everybody and making it making it better.
Especially Mr. Groves. Yes.
Now they've met.
Okay, well,
Have a good evening.
well, that's a nice complimentary thing to say about an employee, so thank you, Will. I'm glad to know that your talents are appreciated by the public, so that's good. And it sounds like we have something more on our agenda. Is there anyone else on Zoom or anything with a raised hand? No. Okay, great. Thank you so much for checking. Okay, it says on our agenda now that we are going to have the background land use interests. Nick, is Peter going to do that?
So, Commissioner, I'd like to, kind of comment about the status of the Planning Commission, the seats. There's some pushback about being a registered lobbyist with Central Oregon Land Watch for Mr. Hovkamp here. And the Tumalo seat, there's been some hot topics, hot input right now on that. And now, Matt Cyrus has been appointed to follow your position. So as one commissioner, county commissioner for the Planning Commission seats, I'm pretty comfortable with where we're at. We've got diversity. I want this group to be able to have, the discussion coming from all angles, and diversity and opinion is good at this table. So that's where I start on this, balance of what's going on here. The geographic diversity, I know that there's a statement about the Tumalo seat, and Tumalo is right at the edge. Somebody could say they're in Tumalo or the Edge of Sisters, and there was some debate about that. Let's just respect the people that are at the table right now. We've got a couple more seats next year. It's great to have people engaged and in the room here tonight. That's, let's celebrate that. And look for the balance. Me as a seated commissioner, I will make sure to look for the balance items. But also, one of the other things, and it's not a blame game, but a couple recruitment cycles ago, there was like crickets. We'd put out press releases and nobody was responding. All of a sudden it got real exciting. We're getting all kinds of input. So it's like, there's a function of the media and who's following what media paths right now too. Nobody's fault. Put a press release. Used to be you put a press release out and the newspaper would print it, the radio would say it the next morning, and people were listening to that one way or the other. Now we're not getting the same information to the same people or to everybody. It's just a very different time. So let's all work together. No big solutions or changes here tonight. Just trying to lay out what I'm seeing.
Okay, well, I truly have an opinion about Tumalo because I drive through it every day, and I stop a lot, and I feel that it's important. Les Hudson had the appearance of representing Tumalo, and when he left, I felt like the people in Tumalo lost something on the group, and so I'm hoping that we as a county can come up with somewhat of a solution until next year when we can actually make it permanent, but I feel like it's something that we can do earlier rather than later. I feel like, they're growing. They're doing a lot of amazing things in Tumalo, and I think that they are truly worthy of the representation on this group.
If I could tack onto that and say, I would really like to see us over the next 6 months, the next 12 months, work on achieving solid representation for people across the county. And I think we actually really need to start by going back to those zones that were laid out in that old code and reworking that. Because basically, the Tumalo zone right now is a longitudinal band that runs across the county. The Bend zone, theoretically the Bend zone, you could live in Brothers and apply to be the Planning Commission for the Bend, one of the Bend seats. So these geographies, these zones were not, I would just say, I don't think they were very thoughtfully put together in the first place. And we could do some really good analysis and try to break the county up into communities of interest, that are kind of geographically coherent, where people could say, I'm from the Sisters area, and know what that means, and know that there's a certain zone that corresponds to that, and that would be the way that I would like to see us eventually get to ensuring that people from the Tumalo area feel that they are represented, that there's a zone that represents their area that they know was built around communities of interest you know, a certain population base per zone as well. That would be a way for us, ultimately, I think, to ensure that everyone in any community in Deschutes County can feel like they are being effectively represented.
Yes. Oh, do you want to say something, Jessica?
Yeah. A couple other things related with that. One is that I also feel like we're going to be losing Commissioner Crawford in about a year. I think the North County is a really important area. There are a lot of people living there, a lot of different land use issues happening there, so it's another area to consider. So I like the idea of giving it a careful thought in general. And then the other thing for people listening from the public to hear is that even though during our meetings we're usually sitting up there, really we're a citizen involvement committee. So anybody can come to our meetings at any meeting, and at the beginning we have that part that's for public comment. And we really actually love it when people come out and actually speak about what they're interested in. That's really why we're here. And so I also think we really need to be clear that we're welcoming comments. I think we're clear about that as a commission, but I'm just extra clear right now. Please, if anyone would like to ever comment on anything, please come here and make your comments heard, not just so they're heard, but because we want to talk about these things, whether or not you're actually on the commission. And sometimes I think it would be great if people just kind of knew that it's not, you're either on the commission or off the commission. It's like, you're really welcome no matter where you stand with that.
That's great. Thank you for pointing that out. Truly, we had allocated 15 minutes tonight for public comments. And normally, we do really like to have public comments at our meetings. In fact, I think that's one of the best things the County Commission did the last couple of years is we kept our meetings open. Thank you to our staff for being supportive of that, trying to be accessible to the community. I believe that most of the time our doors were unlocked. A few times we had to per state regulations, but other than that, and we would always be careful with, if we only were allowed to have 14 in the room, but we took comments. So every once in a while we hear from people that they appreciated that. It's like when you know of government that's behind doors and no one can make a comment, that's just really not the way it should be. I think, Tony, you had a hand up.
I did. So with what you were saying about press releases, the way that I found out about the South County position is because I'm a business owner with a license in the city of Bend, and I saw it on an email. No other way did I hear it, wouldn't have heard it on the radio. It might be something where we consider, in the South County, Lapine has a little newspaper. Sun River has the Sun River Scene. Maybe in our little community newspapers, we can post these as another option to get the word out.
Thank you for that. Or we could get a really big billboard, too. If we have to, and they'll go like, oh, yes. No, that's a great idea. Truly, using local newspapers, I think we could make it. And thank you for sharing that with us because, I think it was South County before that we were having a hard time finding someone. And great points. Thank you.
So on the geographic representation, this is rural land use. This isn't in the cities because they have their own planning commission. This is the rural land use. Your whole group, the 7, are on the same topic, and it's either resource or non-resource land or whatever the topic is. So as I say, I wouldn't advocate for getting real clear black and white boundaries about either you're in or you're out. I mean, we need a good mix of people that are thinking rural and making good choices for rural. And yes, there's different parts. I mean, I'm from South County. We're from South County, right? But once you start talking about land use, it's got to make sense across the whole rural anyway. So I'm just thinking, let's not start to say, well, we can't have there's got to be a little bit of gray in the big picture here, just welcoming everybody's opinions.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Peter, did you want to say anything?
I can.
Yes.
Chair Adair, are we ready to transition to agenda item number 3?
Sure.
this was an opportunity, I mean, we recognized as staff, you know, given the last time the planning commission met was well over 2 years ago, that it would be valuable to have a conversation with the members of both commissions to share your background and interest, you know, what compelled you to apply, to the extent that that's noteworthy as the two commissions re-engage really for the first time and again over 2 years. There's a number of, all of you are well aware of the land use issues that have been identified in the work plan. The work plan was acknowledged by the board recently, and we've included some of the more, you know, we didn't include everything because that would have been just including the work plan, but we included some of the more prominent topics with some calendars, with links to the project's websites. We have staff here, your long-range planning staff is here. If you have questions or comments about items in the work plan that speak to both commissions, and we know that there's significant expectations by both bodies for the department to address a number of projects, possibly ham radio. So we're here as staff to answer your questions, provide context for any of the projects that are noted in our work plan, but recognize that this evening is an opportunity for, I know, the Planning Commission, in terms of just an opportunity to provide a little bit more context about their background, their experiences. I know that Chair Karras and Vice Chair Altman really valued the experience they had with recent interviews on the Planning Commission to get to know the Board of County Commissioners in ways that you just don't get often, which I think this meeting for the next, say, 90 minutes, if we need it, affords an opportunity to kind of build on those relationships and hear about expectations, not only with the Planning Commission, but of your staff who are here and who take their jobs quite seriously to be your planning consultants that can execute those projects that all of you have identified are noteworthy for our community. So that we wanted to keep it a bit free-form, but also provide a framework with the work plan and with those prominent projects that we've been talking about for quite some time now.
Yes, and then, of course, there's always that other issue, water, which we keep seeing,
Yeah.
you know, reading next door, it's an issue all over the county, or not, yeah, all over the county. And we're working on that grant funding, and yet that funding, it was from last year, it was $585,200. Well, when you look at what's happening with the price of everything, it's really going to be a drop in the bucket, what we can do to help. And we were discussing it the other day. They're going to come back to us with a bit of a plan. But, you know, it was either loans or small grants. Well, I know my neighbor that was putting in a well thought he was going to be spending $10,000, and I believe he had to spend over $20,000. And, you know, in Alfalfa, I believe you're spending like $40,000 if you've got an issue out there, because they have to go to 800 to 1,000 feet if they've got a problem. So I know everyone's concerned about water. So, and yet it's, my latest is we need to get rid of more juniper trees. So thank goodness we just got a grant for $250,000 to get rid of juniper trees on a private land next to BLM land. So the more we can do, I know that Crook County really works on getting rid of them. You realize they use 30 to 50 gallons a day, the large trees, and they, we only get 11 inches of rain average a year. So you just think what they're doing to our environment, and the fact that, what is it, we have 6 times more than we had 80 years ago or something. I mean, the quantity is just unbelievable. I was pulling them the other day. They were like maybe 1.5 inches, but their roots were like this. Yeah, I know. And my husband goes, well, I sprayed them. And I go, honey, I don't think spray affects junipers. So, yeah, I was pulling them by hand. But it is amazing what you think that when you see they just take over, nothing gets underneath them. And we've had a lovely spring of rain, but we need to find really clever ways to get rid of more junipers.
if the commission is interested, if this would be helpful, again, staff wants to be here in a supportive role, but if you would like, the comprehensive plan update, we've just hired a consultant. We have staff here, Will and Nicole could come up and give you an update, or for people who might be listening online, the comprehensive plan update is going to be a vehicle to receive issues like water resources and water conservation, to identify it not only as a community challenge, but also opportunities that can be afforded through the comprehensive plan process as we, again, forge our partnerships and look for opportunities to collaborate on some of these regional issues. So if that's helpful for both commissions, we can certainly reintroduce that if it's helpful. But we recognize that this update that the board has graciously funded, a consultant is going to provide an extraordinary opportunity over the next 18 to 24 months to talk about these issues at a regional level. So it's a very exciting time, and we're really looking forward to it as your staff with the Planning Commission to engage the citizens.
So I think if I can make a suggestion, I think that short conversation we just had about the areas was really great. I think I know something I enjoyed about getting to spend a little bit of time with each of you over the past couple months is that it's really interesting to hear just what you guys think about things. So my suggestion is it would be great to maybe if staff could introduce the topic, and then maybe we could just have an informal discussion about it. And if people want to share whatever they want to share about their views, it's just, for me personally, very interesting. Also helpful because we're always trying to kind of figure out how can we help you guys and the types of recommendations that we make, and we want to make recommendations that are useful. And so sometimes it's good to hear what you all think on these different issues, and it can just be informal and people can share whatever they want. Does anyone not like that idea?
It's a fabulous idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe if it can, sorry.
I just looked like he was ready to jump in.
Oh, Commissioner Swisher.
Yeah, he's ready, he's ready, he's ready.
Do it.
I'd like to give just a very brief review of a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when we were all slapped in the face with the population growth estimates. I mean, it just absolutely whammed us in terms of, I'm speaking for me personally, but I think many of the other commissioners were feeling that. And emerging from that, there seemed to be like 4 critical areas: water, housing, transportation, communication. And from that, a lot of other spin-offs that went on before. So the quality of life, and how would that change by the decisions we make in the county, wildlife, variety of things. Those 4 things seem to be very central and critical questions that we would face around that. And so from that, again, that sort of drove a lot of my thinking, and I think other commissioners weighed in at other pieces with that. But again, as we come back to your suggestion and those ideas, I just wanted to give you a little context, at least for maybe 8 years worth of thinking. That's sort of been the driving fundamental 4 pieces. That all, obviously there's much more than that, but if you look at that, that says a lot about what's this county going to look like in 20 years if we don't attend to and think about those particular areas. So, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
So that brings up the concept of the comprehensive plan. I think of it as a 20-year vision document, kind of a 20-year horizon, maybe updated every 10 years. So, you say, what is it going to look like 20 years from now? That's exactly kind of the horizon you think that we're planning for at this point in time. And it is all about population growth, the state land use system, putting people in the cities and keep the rural. But we still have undeveloped rural parcels. Every day somebody's building a new house. There's like 3 of them going in my neighborhood. It's like, I didn't know that was going to be a single family, property or house. And then accessory dwelling units, ADUs in the rural is going to be really interesting. And some of the realities are triggering septic upgrades, where as soon as somebody comes in and say, well, what's the status of your septic? I haven't touched it since, you know, the 1980 or whatever, and that'll be a big moment. Plus the transportation system development charge, right? I mean, that's going to be another $4,800 or whatever the number is. There's some realities in there that are going to be kind of pricey and some of them will fit real well, and other ones are like, well, that put it out of reach already. But that's going to be a place for people to be. So it'll be interesting to see the population numbers with that stuff being developed.
Oh, and one thing tonight, I would like Tanya perhaps to bring us up. I believe we're still in the dark on Measure 109, but Tanya might be able to say a few things about that and what we're dealing with on that issue, because the state hasn't come up with the regulations, and they probably won't till the very end of the year, if we're really lucky. And remember who voted for Measure 109 and where it will impact. So I would love to have Tanya just talk to you guys about that. Sure, why not? Because I know did you get, okay. Good. So now you're on a sugar high and it's perfect.
Yeah.
Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner. So just a brief update to everybody about psilocybin. So I did a brief update to the board last week, this week?
Last week, I think.
It's the sugar. And I will be reporting back to the Planning Commission. We kind of touched on it a little bit at the last meeting, but essentially Measure 109, which is what legalized psilocybin in Oregon beginning on January 2nd, 2023. It's in the process of being developed by the Oregon Health Authority, who's going to be administrating the program, the OHA. And when this was voted on in the last general election in 2020, at that time it was given a 2-year period, what they call the development period, which is when OHA kind of figures everything out in terms of all the rulemaking. Certain aspects of the rules were provided in the original ballot measure. There are some, I mean, it's a long ballot measure, about 55 pages or something, with lots of rules, but not quite enough to give us direction from a land use standpoint. OHA is currently doing their rulemaking. They seem to be having meetings about every month, so they're working on it, and they're doing some rules. A lot of them don't pertain to the things that we at the county are going to be dealing with, or at least from a land use perspective. A lot of it is kind of the aspects of testing the substances and kind of the chemical requirements and things like that is not my bailiwick. But the rest of it, the land use aspect, a lot of that is still in development, and they, in theory, have until the end of this year to figure it out and to publish these rules. And the tricky part for the county is that OHA is going to begin accepting applications for licenses on January 2nd. So that leaves us with New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, in theory, to figure this out, assuming that those rules are not completed until the very, very end. It's possible they're rolling them out on a kind of earlier basis. So by the law, counties are automatically opted in. This is different from the marijuana program. So if the county does nothing, the program begins January 2nd with the rules that are in place from the OHA. Those that are existing in Measure 109, as well as the subsequent rules that are happening, that are being made right now as we speak. Counties can opt out. And that will be referred to the voters at the next general election, which we believe would be this November. And therein lies the issue. It's really difficult for the commission and the Planning Commission, and frankly everybody, the industry included, to figure out what shape this program is going to take. Whether that has to do with the service centers, which are the locations where you go for the experience, and it's an administration session, which is kind of the terminology that they're calling it. So we don't really know what that could be like. So it's very hard to make a decision on opting in, opting out, or if the county wants to consider additional time, place, and manner rules. So we're in a tricky position. And if the county does want to refer an opt-out to the voters in the next general election, there is a time frame associated with that. And it's really soon. Basically, I believe the ballot measure title has to be filed with the county clerk August 19th, something like that, August 19th. So, and prior to that, if that's the direction that the county wants to go, there has to be an ordinance past to do so, and a public hearing, and, you know, the associated notice periods with those. So it backs us up to July, essentially. And it's difficult, of course, as I keep saying, to not know exactly what the county is opting in or opting out to without knowing all of the extent of the rules. So right now, we're just, at the moment, we're in a holding pattern. We don't really know, we don't anticipate any additional rules coming our way in the immediate future. It's possible some might trickle out of OHA, but we really just don't know. So staff will be coming back to the board next week, Monday, I believe, to just present some options in terms of the timing, if the board does want to consider opting out or going with the program as is. And I'll have a little flow chart to just kind of show all the options. And we're trying to coordinate as much as we can with other counties, people in the industry, just Association of Oregon Counties, basically anybody who might, we're kind of all collaborating together to figure out the best way to navigate this. So that's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So it's magic mushrooms, an experience at a service center. A service center is a land use. It could be a medical facility where you go in, or it could be a retreat type facility. The law says not in residential areas, but that's more of a neighborhood in a city is what I think they're referring to. And I mean, I could be wrong on some of this. This is the scenario I'm seeing. We could, so rural land use is resource or you know, exception areas, which is MUA 10 or RR 10. We got to get real clear on what would we allow there if we were going to do this, and what would it mean, and is it a multi-day weekend retreat experience, or is it a medical procedure? I mean, we don't even know. Nobody's really talking about this in the state. The state, you know, what the people voted on said there shall be a 2-year implementation or planning window, and that window is closing, and nobody's paying attention to this. That's the interesting thing. Every jurisdiction should have probably talked about it a little bit or know what's going on, but you know, maybe COVID and politics and the rest of the world is happening, and this thing is getting closed in a window all of a sudden. So yeah, Monday afternoon we'll talk about what do we know, where we want to go with this as a board for the people. But yeah, does anybody else have any information on this, or?
Didn't they have a lot of
It's all
council
new.
meetings, though? I thought they were counseling their meetings, like repetitively. That's what, because I was getting all their emails, and they'd go like, well, this meeting's postponed, or that meeting's postponed. But can these retreats be on EFU land?
We believe they can.
Yes.
As far as the
Retreat
meeting
centers.
scheduled, I haven't heard of that. I know that OHA, they just had one at the end of May. I think it's roughly kind of the third week of every month they seem to be happening, and we're going to be monitoring that. But yeah, the what they call a service center, that's where the administration session takes place. We don't know, you know, it could take the shape of just a, you know, you're going into essentially a doctor's office type setting, you know, very bare bones kind of thing. Or it could be, the way we understand it, it could be something larger, more significant. And we're waiting to kind of find that information out.
Thank you.
If I
So-
could just say that, well, a couple of, one thing I would love for Tanya to share with people is some statistics about the ballot measure that, you know, the statewide ballot measure that passed, that is kind of driving all this, and, you know, what the numbers were for and against, and also the local numbers. But I also just want to emphasize to people that, when first hearing about this, I feel like there's been a tendency here in our community to immediately compare it to recreational marijuana. It's like, oh, so your ballot measure is approved, and opt in, opt out, you got to think about those things. But I don't think that's a really good comparison to make, because the way that this was proposed, this is a medical treatment that is being proposed for people who have certain kinds of mental health challenges, and there actually is a substantial amount of research on veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and other people who are dealing with trauma, that demonstrates that, you know, this is a potentially highly effective treatment. So, you know, while someone might look at this and say, like, well, is this like citing, you know, recreational marijuana production out in the rural part of the county? maybe a little bit like that, but I mean, on the other hand, you could hear about these administration centers, or service centers.
Service.
That, in some ways are more sound to me more like citing a residential treatment facility for someone who's dealing with some kind of, for people who are dealing with, you know, various kinds of mental health challenges. So I just want everybody to not immediately kind of try and pigeonhole this into, you know, an experience that we've had in the past, recreational marijuana, and to see it as something unique. And could you review some of the voting statistics from the ballot?
Yes, from my head. I believe, and unfortunately I came from another meeting, so I don't have that in front of me, but I believe it was in the county 53%.
It was like
It was a
52.
little bit less, the margin was a little closer.
It was like 48-52 in this county. It was 53, I think, for the state was a bit more, but we were less than the state.
The county was a little bit less than the state, but it was, yeah, either 52 or 53 in favor. And I think your point is really well taken about it being different than marijuana in that, especially for the service centers, the whole experience takes place in this service center. It's not like with marijuana, there's retail and you can buy your product and walk out in the parking lot and do whatever you want with it. This is kind of happening under the guidance of someone who is certified by OHA. So whether that takes an hour or 8 hours, we don't really know, but it is, you know, to our understanding, largely invisible, that to kind of outside world. You know, there might actually be, and this is part of the rulemaking, there might actually be some outdoors component allowed, but it would still be kind of under the guidance of somebody administering the session. So I think there are a lot of differences. That's a good point.
It actually passed the state with 55.68%, whereas I believe it only passed in Deschutes with 52%.
That sounds like it was 52 point something. I mean, and you know, the other thing to think about, there's the administration kind of usage of the product, but then on the production side, you know, when we think about recreational marijuana production in the county, you know, people immediately picture greenhouse with odor coming out of it, or, you know, potentially odor coming out, large amounts of electricity use for lighting, and I don't think we would anticipate seeing that kind of, you know, a psilocybin production facility with that same kind of you know, those same characteristics.
One of the I spoke to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, their Farm and Forest coordinator, who had reached out to Oregon Health Authority, and right now the Oregon Health Authority is not going, to the best of our knowledge, as we can look to the future and kind of where they're headed. They're going to have rulemaking in the fall pertaining to service centers. And of course, that doesn't help local governments that are trying to figure out how to understand the nature and operational characteristics of these service centers. I don't think that they're going to get into this. They're not trained to be thinking about land use implications. But what I think is going to come out of that is they're going to contemplate how much psilocybin, for example, can be made available at a service center, and that'll dictate how many, they call them clients, can be served at any one time. And then based on those numbers, you could get a sense of, okay, well, how many, they call them facilitators, are going to need to be available for each client, and then whatever requisite supporting staff. And so those numbers and similar ways that they're kind of quantifying how this product is going to be potentially consumed, I think is going to allow local governments to make informed decisions about what that means in terms of intensity of use. And I think that the question for the board on Monday, for your consideration, is whether the board is comfortable dealing with this ambiguity now, knowing that to opt out, we really don't have a lot of time when you think about 4th of July weekend and there's requisite steps that need to, as Tanya noted, that need to be in place to have ballot language to be on the ballot on a general election. So yet again, Deschutes County is at the forefront of this issue. I mean, Tanya received an email from a colleague on Senate Bill 391 about some of the work that they're doing for rural accessory dwelling units, which is a separate conversation, which was, I thought, very fascinating. But they're just now beginning to talk about psilocybin, and with Tanya's leadership and Will's, they are forwarding the communications, the memorandums that we've made available to the board. They've forwarded that to the other county planning directors as a courtesy, and so they're kind of following on the board's footsteps, so to speak, about how we're collectively sharing our understanding about this new legislation. And but yet again, here we are. Deschutes County is dealing with this as about our first impression, and I think all the other counties, for various reasons, are kind of taking advantage of it as they prepare this summer to have similar dialogues with their staff and ultimately their elected officials. So we just don't have a lot to work from, and the service center concept is admittedly just quite nebulous. And it's not meant to be critical of Oregon Health Authority. I don't think that they're on a strict mandate. I think they're thinking about public health and public safety, and not necessarily what it means in terms of land use characteristics and operational impacts that it could have in the rural county under different rural zoning schemes and whatnot. So that's why credit goes to the staff of just staying on top of this and bringing it to your attention as quickly as possible.
Tanya, that was excellent. No, I meant truly, you just laid it out. I mean, this is how you laid it out last week for us, but what you just did after eating cake. I'm very proud of you.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. Well, related with your point, so for people that don't know, in my regular citizen life, I'm a psychologist. And I thought I would just point out a couple things that I don't know the answers to most of these things, but if it is sort of like a residential treatment facility, usually those are, there's a lot of regulations involved with setting up a residential treatment center. People that come to a residential treatment center often will have a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis. I don't know if you're required to have a diagnosis to attend a experience.
No, you don't need a diagnosis per se, but you do need to go through kind of an initial screening with the facilitator, but you don't need to have like a prescription saying, they do a check to make sure, I think, that you're not gonna, I don't know.
Well, that's an important point, because when we diagnose people with mental health disorders, there's quite a bit of training involved with that. In some states, you need to have a PhD. In other states, you can have a master's. Different diagnoses sometimes need different degrees or licenses to do that. Anyhow, there's a lot, and for better or for worse, like our mental health system has all kinds of different things with it that people debate. Like there's a lot of people who feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping in the mental health system. Like maybe you shouldn't have to go to someone with a PhD to tell you how you feel. Maybe you should be able to look in the diagnostic statistical manual and say, you know what, I'm depressed. This says, I meet all the criteria. So for better or for worse, but that's one thing. And then the other thing is that the people treating you at a mental health residential treatment center have licenses or are working underneath the supervision of somebody with a license. And one of the important things we do with our licenses is confidentiality. The licensing, if I break a client's confidentiality, they can go to the licensing board. The licensing board will regulate me. They'll take away my license or charge me a large fine. They have investigative processes. So that's different. We also know what to do if somebody does have a self-harm concern, or, you know, where do we refer them to? There's a lot of training on that, how to de-escalate things. So there's a little bit of unclarity so far on what the facilitators will have to have in terms of training, but my understanding so far is that they don't need licenses. Mental health, like psychology or licensed marriage and family therapist or any of that stuff. So it is kind of a weird thing, because you're right that there is some research supporting that this could be really helpful for some people, especially people who maybe haven't responded well to traditional or conventional treatment for mental health problems. But on the other hand, it's maybe something to think about as you guys decide whether you want to do refer to the election for the opt-out or not. Like, if it does matter to you whether it's a retreat experience or a mental health treatment center, then there's stuff to think about. And I know we have awesome people working at the behavioral health department, so I'm sure you could consult with them too and ask them, like, you know, if there's anything and maybe it doesn't matter, but maybe it does.
Well, yes, but Oregon's 50th for residential treatment beds in the nation, and we are number 2 for addiction with alcohol and drugs. Some drugs were number 1, but we're we're number 2. And so
We already have issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a lot of issues already, so anyway. And we have the second biggest population of homeless after the state of California. So we're dealing with a lot.
Some of what Jessica was bringing up was actually what I was going to ask about, but assuming either there's no ballot measure, local ballot measure, or you put it to the voters and they choose to proceed, and we go to time, place, and manner, a couple of things I was curious about in terms of setting up time, place, and manner guidelines around facilities like this are, so one of the things that Tanya shared with us when she did her presentation to the board was that the experts on this think that there's going to be maybe the scale of production maybe is like a couple of large warehouses worth of production space across the entire state, not 30 very large, marijuana production facilities per county. So if the total production is not that big, is it possible for us to put caps on the size of a production facility at the local level? So that, we don't get an enormous warehouse out in the middle of, the rural area between Sisters and Redmond, for example. But, you could allow for production, but, ensure that it's going to be on kind of like a, boutique scale as opposed to, a massive warehouse scale. Is that something that we are allowed to do during time, place, and manner restrictions?
Do you want me to? I think it's going to be great questions, and there's a lot of questions. This one was on production. I think it's going to be imperative to understand what the rulemaking produces as it pertains to production, to processing, and to the service centers. I think one wants to be. My sense is Measure 109 was written with the experience of how recreational marijuana was handled at the local level. Instead of opting out, local governments are opted in unless they choose to opt out. And I think the state has limited, the only TPM that's acknowledged in the statute pertains to setbacks and in separation distances. Thank you. So I think one would want to be cautious about not overly regulating this industry from a TPM standpoint in light of the experience with recreational marijuana. How far one can go, I think, is just going to be dependent first to understand what Oregon Health Authority does to define these three industries. I think it's what I heard anecdotally is that OHA may limit the the production, how much can actually be produced at any one site, and then ultimately, how much psilocybin can be made available at any one time at these service centers. And that may get to your very question about making sure that these are modest operations in their ability to grow, say, process and deliver that product to a client, so that it's not concentrated in ways that impacts localities or puts so much of that production in just a few producers. But all great questions, and one that, if Dave was here, there's conversations that are happening amongst county councils. Rob Bavette, who was with AOC, is now with Washington County. They're all beginning to ask these questions, and what's frustrating for local government and for your staff, I think, is Oregon Health Authority had 2 years upon adoption of Measure 109, which was in November of 2020, to start promulgating rules. And there's all sorts of reasonable, I'm sure, excuses for why it's now just getting started, the pandemic, retention and recruitment challenges. But for those local governments that have to apply this law, for the rulemaking to start as late as it is, has put us at a tremendous handicap, because there's so much ambiguity right now, and which is why we're bringing this issue up to the board so quickly, just because we want to make sure the board has ample time to consider whether or not it makes sense to consider opting out, or and based on that decision, if not, what it means to go forward, knowing that this rulemaking is not going to get done until late fall.
Tanya, are you doing the presentation next Wednesday at the AOC legislative meeting? Nobody's asked you to do that? No, I mean, I'm just thinking how much you've worked on it. I was just wondering, because I'm sure AOC it's going to come up, I would think, next Wednesday, don't you think, Peter? Nick?
I know that there is a meeting on, you said the 14th, I think?
Well, next
Friday,
there's a meeting on it too, yes.
Right. And so, and so Tanya's going to be in Hermiston to make the presentation about Senate Bill 391, as you recall.
Yes.
But Will and I know one or both of us will be attending that session via Zoom to stay on top of that conversation, and we will certainly recap it for both commissions as more information is eventually gleaned. But there's just not a lot out there right at the moment.
What time is the presentation on that Friday?
I can tell you.
I mean, yes.
That is at 9:00.
Okay.
It's a webinar. The Oregon Health Authority, Oregon Psilocybin Service Section, in partnership with AOC, is inviting local government to a webinar, and that's from 9 to 10 a week from tomorrow. And I can, if you'd like it, we can forward that.
Good.
Are you interested? Shall we forward that too?
Yeah, I just think it might be interesting to see what they are going to tell, since it does feel like they're behind. So, yeah, like, what are they going to tell us next Friday? So, interesting.
Chairman Ellen?
Yes, Susan.
I would actually respectfully disagree with Commissioner Chang. I think that the public will see this very much like the recreational marijuana issue. I feel like I have my finger on the pulse of what a lot of rural voters think about this situation. I think that a lot of people think that Measure 110 is really not being handled very well. People thought that money would go for mental health services, and it's not, and this would just be seen as another thing that's probably going to fail in its intended public benefit. I think that people will see this as, I think Deschutes County is a perfect example if you've got the rural urban, and you've got the people in the city vote for the things that they support, and then the people in the country, in the EFU zones, in the rural area, are the ones who have to deal with it. And I think they really don't like that. So I think it will be a problem for people. I think people would be very upset if this was not put out to a vote, to the ballot measure in the fall, because I think that if it's going to come to rural lands, people should have the opportunity to vote if they want that in their backyard or not. It's, to me, just the fair and the right thing to do, instead of someone who lives in the city is like, great idea, you deal with it over there. I have heard from so many people that they have seen an increase in drug use. They're concerned about the level of drug use, that people come here because they know that drugs are easy to get and it's decriminalized for personal use, and it's creating problems with crime. Homelessness is a bigger issue. It's not all about that, but there's certainly a part of the population who are involved in drug use. I mean, it's, yeah, substance abuse disorders. To Commissioner Curris's point, you know, what happens if you have these service centers in the rural areas and something goes bad? I kind of see it like when the whole medical marijuana started a long time ago, that there are doctors who are like, oh, tell me your symptoms. What are your symptoms? Here's a list of symptoms. Just check the box and here's your card. And I think that this could be viewed in that way also, especially if you don't have to go to an actual medical doctor, psychiatrist, or psychologist, that it's just like, you know, you could get ordained to marry somebody online. You could just take this 1-hour quiz and someone can come to you to get a prescription, and then you go off, you know, to some rural property and have your supervised fun drug experience. So these are all the things that I'm hearing from people, and I feel like as a planning commissioner who represents people in the rural county, these are things that I know that people are thinking, it's on their minds. I would encourage the Board of County Commissioners to put this on the ballot. I think, to me, it's the right thing to do. I think absent knowledge of any rules from OHA of how this is going to play out, I don't think that many people would really trust them to come up with a good system right off the bat. I think it would be a better idea to see how it plays out, what rules they come up with, how land use could be built around that if the voters opted in, but they should be given the chance to opt out. I think that's the right thing to do. With the whole recreational marijuana, when that was really at the height of its Board of County Commissioner meetings, that I know there was a lot of activity around that. I don't think that the rural voters were really taken seriously when they were talking about what it brought to their neighborhoods. You know, even though people live far apart, there's still a neighborhood and a sense of community. I've had a neighbor say that, you know, the FBI came to her house and is like, this guy's a bad guy and we are after him and we need to be on your property to see what's going on. There have been, you know, the thing in Alfalfa, I know there have been things in Lapine. I think that people want to assume that the best will come out of a situation, but I think that we also need to be prepared for what the worst case scenario might look like. Trying to see if there's anything else that I wrote down because I want to just get it all out. I think that's it. I think that there's not enough information or trust in the process and what OHA is going to come up with for us to say, sure, let's go along with it and we'll just wing it when it happens. I think that would be a very bad idea. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Susan. Yes, Steve?
I think the issue is a little more complex. It's not as simple as I live in the city or I live in the rural country. I'm using Sisters Country as an example. And some of the discussions going on that I'm privy to, some of the most adamant people against this happen to live in the city limits of Sisters, and some who are very, very supportive happen to live in my neighborhood, which is in the county, but it's close to the city, as well as a couple other people I know in the area that has 20-acre hobby farms, etc. So again, I don't think you can generalize to the entire county. As commissioners, you try to make your choice about this. In some areas, it's probably certainly as my colleague has described, but I would not describe that as Sisters Country's attitudes. So ultimately, again, I think it's more complex that you're going to have to grapple with as commissioners.
Any more comments? Oh, yes, Tony.
I'm not, the folks I've talked with, it's never really come up as a topic, but you look at 52 yay, 48 nay, that's like too close to call. If it was like 60-40, that would be a little bit different because it's so close and we've had another 2 years. I agree in that respect that it might be worth putting it back to the voters.
Thank you for those comments. Anyone? Well, it has been, thank you, Tanya, for.
See you Monday.
Yes, yes, see, I know, well, it's so good to hear everyone's input on this because, yeah, we've seen what happens, and I just feel the reason that they postponed so many of those meetings, and now it's, you know, if anything isn't available till the end of the year, but we actually have to make our decision now, and we have to make it on the information that we have, so, and as it really was only, you know, 52-48, that's pretty close. So, anything else wonderful? I know I've seen some great emails that I'm getting about water and things.
So another topic, we can just throw another one. Last year, we had the Darlene fire, southern Deschutes County. It was it stopped at the power line, so we know that some fire break activity does work. But that did burn a couple, you know, private properties and residents in the Section 36 down there. And remember, we were talking about non-prime resource land. You know, maybe we could find a middle ground on something. These are 5 and 10 acre parcels. It's a section of land. They're a bunch of private ownership. It's zoned forest. And there's houses there that have not been permitted by the county. That's the history of this. So this is, you know, kind of legislative advocacy, but the big picture for all of us. When you look at it, it looks like in the late 70s and the early 80s, when things were being zoned around the state, you know, this is prime farmland, this is, you know, pre-platted rural residential lots, this is inside of a city, this is outside the city, just the big blocks. But there was this kind of negotiated, unknown, you know, subset of parcels that just kind of got, well, let's call them resource lands and move on for now. I think that's what happened in the early 80s. Big Look was the opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe we need to go back and take a look at these things. You know, I don't know when that was, 12, 15 years ago. And that, you know, it's just, everybody's so proud of our land use system, but it's now at a shaved to a fine point, and we haven't even allowed ourselves to do those things out there that maybe we should have been doing, you know. So we've got private property, house was built on it, not permitted, not insured, fire goes through, somebody's going to rebuild on that property, it's not going to be permitted, it's not safe. Maybe there's a conversation there. So I'm just saying, let's open up the land use book, and as I say, we don't even have the authority at this table to do that, but you know, with connections around the state or whatever, let's, you know, what's the future look like? Can we get back and say, well, and I also had a call from another person, had a couple 1 acre lots down the street in La Pine, and they're zoned EFU, they're zoned farmland. It was, you know, if you look at a map, it sure just looks like a kind of an area relative to the other rural residential lots all around it. But it's just at the edge of the prairie, and they just did it with a big broad mark back in the day. And now people are trying to do a, you know, non-farm dwelling on these 1 acre lots next to the RR10 zone property. Is that what we want? I don't know. I don't support it, but we're not allowed to fix it.
Well, what we can do is we can facilitate people getting the designation changed on a case-by-case basis. You know, we were told by the state, we're not doing a non-prime resource land thing for you right now. But that doesn't mean that those landowners aren't, they still have the pathway of doing an individual, essentially an individual petition. And there are things that we could actually be doing to help them do that, you know, if.
But that's government negotiating with government for government's purposes. it doesn't even make sense. It's just busy work. I mean, yeah. So, yeah, I don't, yeah.
You can call it whatever
Yep,
you want.
sorry.
I'm calling it a pathway forward for
Yep.
people who want to get it done, and something that we could do to support the residents of Deschutes County who want to make different uses of their lands. One of the suggestions I made was if soil analysis is really a central piece of what people need to move forward with that kind of redesignation, and it's expensive. Maybe there are things that we can do to address that cost or get some economies of scale to cover a number of people who want to do that all at once, so that that cost and technical process barrier is reduced for them. We've also talked about that kind of this template process, which basically setting it up for people in a template so that not every landowner needs to reinvent the wheel. So we can rail against the state, or we can actually do something to help people use the pathway that they've got.
Yeah, so, and I just see it very differently, as in say, government probably didn't intend on this, but we're so proud of ourselves to holding on to the land use system and not allowing, extraneous things to happen. So, as I say, the solution you're proposing, and this is good for all of us to see how we're going back and forth a little, is, the state's land use system, the county's resources, we have to take people's tax dollars at two different levels of government to negotiate, to try to get somebody to have clear opportunity to build on their property, which I'm just talking about a small subset of parcels. True wealth comes from private property ownership and being able to sell something of value, not government talking about how we're going to negotiate between two levels of government.
And the state land use planning system sets the framework for how land is used in Oregon, and it has achieved some really remarkable things. There are moments and places where it is extremely cumbersome, and I think it's our responsibility to help people get through those.
Well, that's my goal too.
I just thought it might be important, since it is 7:15, to bring up housing. That was something that Stephen mentioned, and you know how important that ADU bill has been to the commissioners. The fact that we have 7,800 parcels that actually have a residence on them that could possibly have an ADU if it's not in South County and they need 5 acres instead of 2. And then we've got another 2,000 lots, but
So that's a discussion to be had. Let's not make sure that's an assumption up front.
No, but I meant that's one of the issues. But the good news is, the Bend Chamber actually has a website now on ADUs. They're truly promoting it, trying to make it easier for the community to understand the opportunity. We need workforce housing here. We need it for the nurses, for the teachers. We are really short on workforce housing, and with the costs going up a lot, it's going to be challenging. But I know that our building department has worked so hard on Senate Bill 391. Is there anything you want to talk about at this moment?
Well, thank you, Chair Adair. We know that, thank you, that Senate Bill 391, the rural accessory dwelling unit law is a priority for the Board of County Commissioners. Tanya actually received an email today as we coordinate with our county partners from Lane County. Lane County is thinking about Senate Bill 391, in part because I think they're in later this month under Senate Bill 762 and wildfire. The wildfire mapping and risk classifications are coming out. And Senate Bill 762 will apply to high to extreme classifications in the wildland urban interface. Lane County, I think, is anticipating that areas of their county there'll be areas in Lane County that are not high to extreme, and they'll be in a position to start thinking about how they implement that legislation earlier than we will. And so we're going to be tracking how they define certain concepts. What does it mean to have an evacuation route? What does it mean to define staging? How do they define, within 100 feet of the primary dwelling? I will say that's a little refreshing to not always be at the forefront and learn from how other counties. So our team Will, Anthony, Kyle, Tarek, Peter, are going to be tracking these conversations in our community, and we plan on updating both commissions periodically over the course of this calendar year as we learn more about where does Senate Bill 762 apply in Deschutes County, where do those risk classifications apply, and if we, from that, we will keep everybody abreast of how those laws impact our opportunity to implement rural ADUs, and as soon as we see a straight path to get to ultimately to the Board of County Commissioners, we will do so, again, because we understand it is one of the highest priorities. So the first step will be later this month to understand what the Department of Forestry's mapping reveals and those risk classifications. And then based on that, those circumstances, we'll then track how. I think there's going to be other counties that are going to get ahead of us because they're going to have large areas that aren't high to extreme, and then we can see how their rules and then their public process unfolds and learn from that as we ultimately will initiate amendments, hopefully as early as sometime this fall, but it could be early in winter of 2023. But we know it's a priority, and it was refreshing to see those emails that Tanya received as we communicate with some of our colleagues or our cohorts that kind of resemble us, the Lane counties, the Clackamas counties, et cetera. So that's the update that I have, but again, more to discuss very soon once we see the risk mapping coming from the Department of Forestry.
Oh, and I just realized there's probably a few more that actually might meet the qualifications that are already built that are illegal, that we could make them legal. So that would really be good news for the community because that would give more legal housing.
Well, so for the Planning Commission, if we end up with a code package for accessory dwelling units in the rural county, are we going to be able to have a existing non-conforming use section, and what would make sense there? I mean, that's the work that could happen right here before the board sees it. Relative to the state law, though, is going to be the trick. And then wildfire risk map classifications. Remember, we did a mapping exercise a couple years ago for Deschutes County and tried to figure out, is there a separation between high risk and medium and low? Is there a way to do something? And basically the conclusion was it's all high risk. And, you could talk about somebody's house on the upslope or some specific local geographic feature, but, any forested area, any dry grass area, anything could be in those forests, hot August, fire situation. So we kind of concluded that the whole county could be high risk. So I don't know do we have any information? Is the state thinking that we're not going to be just one map?
Chair, go ahead. I didn't know if you were asking me that.
Go ahead.
Actually, our road district met with a representative of the Department of Forestry, and he said that most likely South County is going to be extreme risk.
Yeah, the whole thing.
South County for sure extreme risk. He was pretty certain of that, and the rest of the county was probably going to be high risk. So with that respect, for the ADUs, as a South County member and everyone I talked to, we want it 5 acres. We don't want it 2 acres. We don't have any water down there. It's just, and if it can't be like a vacation place, and it's going to be full-time, and it's going to be that much more water used. So I do hope the Board of Commissioners decides South County should be a minimum of 5, if not 10 acres. We already have bad nitrates in the soil.
That was the main driver so
Yeah.
far to pointing towards 5 acres.
But I don't know if the feedback has come to you folks, but I had wells dry up in my neighborhood last year, and that's never, ever happened. And I can only imagine if we have 20 ADUs in my neighborhood, how much worse it's going to be.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents.
Well, it was more than 2.
But,
No.
so the process, I mean, I think the Planning Commission will see the recommendations or the code package before we will, and then it'll be a recommendation by this group to the board. So, I mean, this is exactly that's where you have the input. This is it.
Now, See, I have a dear friend that lives on Howard's Lane, and actually the rating there wasn't that high. You know, it's pretty well spaced out and everything, and I was really impressed at the time when I was studying the map, because I think where I am, it's much higher. You know, I'm kind of in the red zone or something. So I know it definitely, but the 10 acres, yeah, you see what's happened to Morrow County. They have a terrible nitrate problem going on, and truly, we're doing the water testing next year, are we not, Peter? Isn't that when DEQ is going to come in and do their testing?
That is, we hope to develop a work plan. This is in response to the Department of Environmental Quality's interest in resampling and monitoring, resampling their monitoring wells in southern Deschutes County. And we're anticipating a work plan with our Environmental Soils Division with support from the Board of County Commissioners in that partnership effort. I'm hopeful that will be in place a year from now. And then with that, will there be discussions about financial assistance in southern Deschutes County as more revenue comes to the Community Development Department in a specific fund pertaining to groundwater protection in southern Deschutes County. So that it's very exciting to see these partnerships reestablish themselves, and with some real potential for funding to help people not only with nitrate issues, but even potentially with some drinking water challenges with wells declining. One thing that I would point out, not as a criticism to the Department of Forestry, but it's just an observation with our state agencies that are finding themselves undertaking all this rulemaking. But with Senate Bill 762, right now the Department of Forestry has an advisory committee to talk about the rules that would be in place for those that are affected by high to extreme risk classification. And it's a very diverse group of stakeholders on all sides of the political spectrum. What's really frustrating for many, and I would say it's true to some extent for local government, is it's when you don't know the risk classifications, it's hard to mobilize and engage about how the rules apply. And the Department of Forestry has just said, we're not releasing these risk classifications until the end of the month. And so for many, it feels like it's the cart before the horse. How do you want us to really dive into these rules? Well, we don't know. Certain industries, certain local governments don't have a sense of the magnitude of what these rules will mean until that mapping comes out. So it's not a criticism of the Department of Forestry. They're under some strict timelines, but for interest groups and property owners and localities, it's very difficult to mobilize and comment on those draft rules, again, when you don't understand the scale.
And then the other thing is the insurance companies are already surcharging like 40%. I was talking to an agent the other day, and so, we've got that, we've got reality on one hand and on your pocketbook.
They have their own maps and analysis that may be better or worse than the state's. When we see it.
Well, they're ahead of the state on it, so, for some reason.
So it's almost 7 o'clock, and I just wanted to ask, so was part of the intention for this, agenda item 3, to go around the table and let all of the planning commissioners share some of their land use interests with us as well?
It's certainly, I think the planning commissioners would, from what I gathered, would value that opportunity to share their perspectives, their interests on the projects that are forthcoming and any other issues that will emerge likely through the comprehensive plan update. So it's certainly, we can circle back to that memo, but this is meant to be somewhat organic.
Okay, item number 4. Jessica.
So I think if I understand Commissioner's suggestion correctly, we're kind of looking at the background and land use interests of the different commissioners. So maybe we'll start with Commissioner Swisher, and maybe you could talk a little bit about, I know this is your last meeting, but maybe you could talk about some of the things that you've learned, over and you've been interested in over the past 8 years, or themes that you've noticed coming up with citizen input.
Well, actually, I probably said quite a bit already, but I would come back to those 4 tenets that I talked about earlier. But also, the huge deals that did come up, marijuana certainly didn't exactly fit into that, but it did fit into the issue of how do we use water and how, at that point. So those 4 tenets I talked about seems to be related to a lot of different things that go on in the county. So over time, I think learning at trying to keep a bigger picture and what are the really 20-year issues, the upcoming comprehensive plan will be critical. And at that point, how do these things that come to us day to day or week to week fit into the bigger scheme of what we're trying to do? And so I think we need to keep our eye on that in particular. And if there's any wisdom, that's all that I could pass along at this particular moment. But I'm sure there's going to be some other new psychedelic product in the next few years that you'll be worrying about time use regulations and so on. So ultimately, don't let that distract you from what's the big picture. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Commissioner Crawford?
Yeah, I was just, having, again, been in this county for a long time. When I graduated from high school, I'm gonna date myself. There was a sign on Greenwood Avenue that said you're now entering Bend with a population of 11,000. You get around Pilot Butte, and I cut and baled hay on property that Costco and the hospital and all those things sit on. This area here, my wife lived just over here a little bit, had chickens and hogs and everything else. So things have changed quite a little bit. My concerns, again, living in Terrebonne, my concerns are based on transportation and quality of life. And I think the whole water issue is a strong concern. I get really concerned about putting houses on 2-acre or 5-acre lots and keeping them green with well water or surface water for no purpose. Really, I would much rather see, and I've said this many, many times, I think Deschutes County, and I'll probably get chastised for this, but Deschutes County from someplace halfway between Bend and Rebben and south, and partially going east, that's not agricultural land. It was agricultural land in 1940 and 1930 when people had some cows and they were living off the produce of their land and surviving. When I was a kid, we sold milk to Bend Creamery. We sold potatoes to the restaurant, the Pine Tavern. And my job to go out there and sort them for number 1s, number 2s, and culls. Culls go feed the pigs, and we'll sell some pork to someone down the road. That is not life in Deschutes County today. So we need to work on those issues for the whole populace that's here, those people that are working in the hospital, those people that are working in the schools, those people that are working in the manufacturing facilities that we have here. Because I think we need to have transportation, and we need to take care of the limited amount of water that we have. And I see people concerned about the amount of water that others are using that don't bother me. So I'm going to have my 3/4 of an acre of green grass, even though it's a nice fire buffer, is a good use of water. So water, quality of life, that'd be my issues, and transportation.
Dale, I thought you were only allowed to have like half an acre of your, around your house green. Does it, I mean, I don't know.
People are just busting the laws.
Yeah.
Both of my neighbors have 2-acre parcels and the whole darn things are green.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a half acre.
okay, I thought that's what the rule was, that's what my husband told me, so. Anyway, I know he follows rules.
If you run a cow on it, then it's a farm, right?
Right.
But it's not.
But then you have to have a water right in order to water more than that half acre. You have to purchase it through the state, and it has to be available. And, that's a whole nother story, so.
Many of those things are not monitored very well.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Vice Chair Altman.
So the land use interests that I have are wildlife. Dark skies, I think, was a very interesting thing that we heard about this year that brought a lot of interest from a lot of people, and I hope that the momentum for that continues. Housing, I agree with everybody. Housing is really an issue. Obviously, we need housing. We need more workforce housing. It'll be interesting to see how the rural ADUs play out and how much housing that is going to be able to offer to people, hopefully at a reasonable price, so that people can continue to live here and have their jobs. Also, general issues that I just hear from voters that interest. I hear general issues from voters, and I find those to be of interest too, which are also housing. Growth management and how to manage the growth of the county. Is the UGB going to change? When is it going to change? Is it going to come to my neighborhood? How far out is it going to go? You know, and then that ties into the whole water issue and the transportation issue. You know, where's the water going to come from? If they expand the neighborhoods, is the city water going to come out? All of those kinds of things. I think, to Commissioner Crawford's point and also Swisher, that they all tie together. You know, there's some really core issues that there's a little thread here and a little thread there, but they are all tied together. Those are my main interests.
Commissioner Williams.
The mule deer winter range is something important to me. As I've mentioned, I have heard of like 40 elk that bed down in my backyard, my front yard, yet, and they've been doing this for as long as I've lived there, yet we're not part of the mule deer range. The mule deer range will benefit so many species. And I don't see large bucks anymore, and we've got to start protecting the species. It is, to me, very, very important.
They have the large bucks, they're in my yard. I'll keep the does and fawns.
Right. Obviously, the ADU is a big issue for me, and I agree with the dark skies. I don't like living in the woods and seeing the glow of Bend. It's just sad. So that's it, and I am so glad I don't live in Redmond and have to drive to Bend every morning. I drove to Redmond yesterday, and it was insane, the traffic coming from there. Backed up literally to Deschutes Market Road. Bumper to bumper, just stop and go.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hovkamp.
Yeah, so let's see. A little bit, I guess, about the perspective that I hope to bring to the Planning Commission. I'm a biologist. I'm not a wildlife biologist, but where I approach that biology, I've been teaching for like 35 years in courses in biology, mostly human biology, so anatomy and physiology. My students are nurses who I really admire and respect a lot, or allied health related to that. I've had several seasons as a naturalist or interpreter at state and national forests and parks. So I bring a naturalist perspective, I hope. And then I've had several years with Central Oregon Land Watch in various capacities. And in recent years, that's been primarily naturalist work. So I lead their field trip hikes. I just did one a little bit ago along the Metolius River. It was really nice, but I enjoy being involved with those naturalist programs. I write a regular naturalist column for Land Watch that comes out. Maybe some of you get it. I don't know. I just wrote one a month ago about frogs and spring frog song in Deschutes County. And then, as Commissioner DeBone mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, I'm a legislative liaison for them. So I had to register with the State Ethics Commission as a lobbyist. Land Watch has a contract lobbyist in Salem, and then we have attorneys that write most of our testimony and provide most of our testimony and so forth. I'm a liaison. As far as I can tell, it's kind of a gopher. I track, as you guys know, because the county engages in legislative advocacy, but there's a lot to track there and kind of plug people into the right hearings and when things are coming up and so forth. So my role is primarily as a liaison in that regard. Anyway, my interests in, or what I hope to bring help with on the Planning Commission, Chair Kieras mentioned it earlier, where the Citizen Involvement Committee is laid out by the land use system. So I hope to learn from the public what their concerns are and how we can help with that. We're advisory to the board, and I understand that. And then, you know, we work on a work plan and then have a schedule that we work through with staff. So I don't know that my own preferences really matter that much, but around the margins, the wildlife inventory really interests me a lot. Mule deer are in trouble, and we know that from ODF and W data, telemetry data, and tracking data around the state, and then individual herds and population numbers that have been tracking downwards for decades, and more precipitously most recently. And it's ironic, you know, because we see so many of them in town, but that's really a sign of poor population health in the rural areas in a lot of ways. So I'd like to help with that where I can. The comprehensive plan update is something that interests me because there's an opportunity to learn a lot there about what community development does, and hopefully to be of service to the commission in sort of chewing through some of those items beforehand. So as Commissioner DeBone noted, it's a 20-year planning horizon. It's kind of the overall guiding document for a lot of what we do. And I'm interested in learning from staff and experts that we bring in and the consultant that I understand that we're narrowing in on. So that interests me a lot. As Vice Chair Altman noted, wildlife and wildlife issues generally always get my attention. Wildlife habitat, and especially probably our beleaguered but beautiful Deschutes River that runs through our county. I care a lot about, and sort of the health of water generally. All water is one water: groundwater, surface water. It's all water. So yeah. Other than that, you know, I haven't lived here as long as Commissioner Crawford. I've been here for 25 years. My wife and I raised our two little boys here. They're actually native Oregonians, where I'm an outlander 25 years ago. They're now great big men. I guess I shouldn't call them little boys, but yeah, that's where I'm from.
So question, when you say wildlife issues are paramount,
Yeah.
does that include rock chucks and ground squirrels? Maybe.
They're part of the
I got
ecosystem.
holes all over my yard right now.
Whistle pigs, yeah.
Does it include pack rats?
Yeah, all right.
The pack rats are my problem.
Probably
There
mess
you
with the
go,
pack
see?
rats.
Okay, so my top land use issues are, it's always hard to choose your top anything, top favorite cake.
Good job.
Yeah. But I guess one thing I think a lot about is quality of life, and that means different things to different people. And so as I've been here for a little over 4 years, I've just been listening a lot to what people who come to these meetings and take the time to share their input find to be part of their quality of life. And I mean, there definitely are some themes, and I'm not saying these are the themes of Deschutes County by any means. It's just some of the themes that come up a lot at our meetings for the people that take the time to come out to these particular groups. But it seems like I have a lot in common in terms of what I view as a high quality of life and why I live here with many of the people who come here. So I'll just start with the dark skies thing. That was, I grew up looking at stars and got really interested in that when I was in 3rd grade or 4th grade or something like that, did a science project. And then I haven't really thought about it a whole lot. I moved to Oregon in 2002, and so I've been here for 20 years now, and I just kind of take it for granted. It's just like, oh yeah, it's dark out, you know, it's really nice. But listening to the presentations that we had about dark skies and looking at the slides of how much the sky has already changed in the last 10 years, the last 2 years, and then what, if it continues to go at that rate, what it'll look like in another 10 years, is kind of disturbing. And one particular set of comments really stood out to me, which was that a lot of people come to Central Oregon either to visit or live because of the amazing beauty that we have here. We got the mountains, we got the river, we got beautiful, meadows in the springtime of cheatgrass. That's not good, but, but we've got these just beautiful landscapes. And one of the presenters pointed out that the night sky is also a beautiful landscape. It might have been the artist, Paul Bennett. Oh man, what an amazing person. So in any case, one of the things that contributes to my quality of life here is just the sheer beauty of the place that we live in. I mean, it's kind of breathtaking a lot of the time. I don't know if sheer beauty is all that fun if you don't have your basic needs met, like housing, a job, not having to sit in traffic for an hour or whatever. Like, that's maybe not a basic need, but it's a pretty basic need. So I think that there's those basic economical issues, but then there's the sort of the, how do we enjoy this place and how do we appreciate it to our maximum ability? And of course, for me personally, wildlife is a big part of that. I see mule deer are one thing, but I see everything is interconnected in the ecosystem, meaning you affect one thing and you impact a whole bunch of other things. And so it's hard to make specific recommendations with things like that because it's so complicated. For instance, we were talking about the juniper trees earlier. There's just, but in terms of interests, I love complex problems. So I'm very interested in that issue and would like to see the county continue to be a place where the ecosystem is very healthy, because I think that actually works out best in our favor as human beings. And then also balancing human needs with, humans are part of the ecosystem too. So we can't just completely ignore human life and just preserve all of our favorite animals. We have to kind of think about how we can all work together. So I think that, the recreation issue. So we've had a few people come up with comments recently about recreation. Perhaps the county should have a recreation department. We, I think, have talked about that being an interesting part of the comprehensive plan discussion. And so I would personally like to see a lot of discussion about that. I don't have a specific opinion or anything at this time, but since a lot of people are moving here for recreation, and a lot of people who have already been here or even were born here do like to do various forms of recreation, from hunting, fishing, hiking, paddling, etc. It's kind of a bummer if you go to your favorite recreation destination and you suddenly just feel like you're in a shopping mall or something like that. Like, it's not really, I'm a firm believer in sharing. Don't worry, I'm not one of those people who's mad at you on the trail because you exist. It's good to share, but it's also nice if people can be maybe more dispersed or something, or like maybe not all running into each other at the same time, or not all impacting the same areas all at once or something like that. So there's a lot to think about there. So I think that covers item 3, unless we want to have, do we want to have board members say land use interests, or do we feel like we kind of covered that earlier?
Yeah, we talked plenty.
Oh, I got another one.
Okay.
But the culture of what are we going to do in Central Oregon with, public land use and homeless issues, the rising cost of land and housing. So that's a big statement. One of the opportunities may be, would we or should we put a campground somewhere? So if we had just a market rate campground, then we have another opportunity for a place for somebody to be. It might help us with a backstop of, you can't be here, but you could be there. So, I'm referring to a homeless issue at that point in time. So where would a campground go? There's not a lot of opportunities on the rural lands, just the way our code is set up. Maybe it was our intention 50 years ago to kind of not allow this. So there's a lot of technology changes. You know, people living the van life, driving around the country. You see Sprinter vans with license plates from all over the place here, and I think that's still going to grow. You know, I think that's common ground for, you know, maybe there's a county parcel that we could do that on. If you talk to Forest Service and they're like, well, it's just if somebody put an application in, there could be a land lease, just like the lake resorts, you know, there's a possibility there. Is there a market for it or not? You know, BLM is the other opportunity. There was a proposal, was it south of, inside of Bend, South Bend, and sure enough, you know, news coverage and then opposition. It's like, well, okay, you know, I mean, seems like it's one of those things that would work out well. I mean, we sell campers all the time here. Somebody buys a house with a small lot, and they try to wiggle their camp trailer right in next to their house just because they don't want to go, you know, pay for a rental to store it. I mean, where can we put a campground? That's one of the interesting topics.
Just one clarification. I mean, the CDD staff did a memo for us maybe a year
Yep.
ago now, looking at mobile home parks, RV parks, and campgrounds. And while RV parks are fairly limited or restricted in where you can put them, campgrounds are actually, it was a conditional use that is pretty widely available. In the description of campgrounds, it said you could have RV sites. So while you can't have an RV park in many places, you could have a campground with RV sites in many parts of the county. So
Well, and there's an amenity requirement though, correct? I mean, that was one of the things. So, you know, I mean, there was a little rock outcropping on 5-acre parcel north of Bend, and it was a quasi judicial deal that was in front of us, but man, it's controversial. You know, is this an amenity or not? I'm not sure. We should debate it, and then we should appeal it, and then we should talk about it some more. You know, is that what
Actually-
we want to be doing? I don't know.
10 acres on the north side of town, and it was, the challenge was just that it was a very skinny property, and the neighbors didn't like it, so.
I'm actually working on a 42-acre parcel. The people want to do a manufactured home park, affordable home, and, you know, something as a pilot, trying to maybe get some kind of legislation through, you know, in the long session next year. But this is 42 acres, and, you know, we haven't really had a new one for, decades. We actually met with some people that had an old manufactured home housing park, and it ended up that we couldn't figure out a way for them to add any more units to what they wanted to do. And it was so disappointing because we'd called these people, left the message and said, we're trying to help you. We're trying to bring more affordable housing. And then they had extra land, but of course it didn't fit with any of the, and I guess, remember, Peter, we never couldn't find a way for those people. It was, south of Redmond. But this 42 acres, talked to ODOT, and I don't know, you know, hopefully something good will happen. Because we could use affordable housing. And, you know, they're so well made in today's world. It could be really nice.
With probably just as much controversy, you also have to cite a landfill, I think, so.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh, yes, we have a meeting on that on Monday afternoon if you want to watch. I think it's the last thing of our agenda. It's going to be good.
Something to consider if I'm asking myself, I have a BLM area right near where I live, which is RR10 in between Redmond and Sisters. Is it cool if we put a campground on that BLM? It's like my house, my neighbor's house, the BLM. For me, it would make a difference where people were allowed to put the campsites or the trailers. If they're right up next to the road, like if this is the parcel, and I don't know how big this is theoretically, but let's say it's 42 acres or something. If this is the road, and then there's going to be people camping and trailers and maybe possibly debris and things blowing around. I don't know, I'm picturing a worst case scenario, blue tarps disintegrating. And it would be nice if it were like, yeah, cool, you can have this 42-acre parcel, but you need to kind of like have the main area over here, and then you have this, what my real estate agent calls it, privacy acreage, have a buffer, the skinny plot, it's kind of, to me, it makes a big difference how close the neighbors are. Are they going to be right close? Or are they going to be like, tucked away? And then you guys still get your rural lifestyle and your space. Just something to think about. Like in terms of like, would I apply this logic to myself? That's where I go with it.
And I think of it as the balance of dispersed camping on the public lands around us, because the
Yeah.
Forest Service and BLM, they have, issues are happening out there right now.
Yeah.
What culture are we working towards, I guess, right? Are we just going to watch those issues expand and grow, or are we going to try to say, well, there are campgrounds available, so, 2 weeks means 2 weeks on public lands, or maybe it doesn't mean 2 weeks. That's kind of what I'm pointing at.
I'm a big fan of people's right to disperse camp on the federal lands, but when you do it literally right on the edge of the city of Bend, so that you only have to drive, a mile to go to the pub, and then you can go back to your dispersed campsite in your $80,000 van. I'd rather you be in a campground where you have to pay for sanitation and waste management and stuff like that than, lighting up the forest next to the city.
For the county commissioner's humor, I would like to add just one tiny little bit. When I first arrived as a school superintendent in Sisters, 96, we were desperately looking for a new place to build a new high school. And the county become very instrumental in helping with the Forest Service and the land exchange between the Forest Service to the county, then to the school district to build that place. It happened to be a much bigger parcel than we just needed for the high school, but the whole thing went to the school district. And it abutted the Tollgate subdivision, which I live in. And my neighbors were absolutely pounding on my head because they knew that the county was intending to use the land we didn't use for the high school to create a new landfill there at that point.
Oh, good idea.
So at that point, the county commissioners at that time bailed me out with my neighbors and the community and said, no, we don't have an intent to put a landfill there. But I'll tell you how small town rumors go. The community was convinced that's where the new landfill was going, was right there above Tollgate. So just
Rumors.
so keep that in mind. Right.
You just started it again.
Oh, that'll be good tomorrow morning.
I heard that.
I'm driving to town. Oh, did you know the commissioners are putting a landfill out by Tollgate? Oh, boy.
In the preliminary siting criteria.
Oh, geez, okay.
Very large acreage with substantial buffering for the new solid waste management station.
That's
Just to be clear.
very sweet. So, are we good?
We go to other board and planning commission coordination issues.
Yes.
Do we have any coordination issues? It seems like we've been coordinating really well with you all from my perspective, but I don't know what the other commissioners think, and I definitely don't know how you guys feel about the coordination.
I think it's been great in the years that, the last couple of years we missed this meeting.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I think we've always had good interaction between Board of County Commissioners and the Planning Commission, in my opinion.
Do you, as board members, feel that, so usually we'll make a recommendation, then the staff will summarize it for you, maybe tell you the exact thing we voted on, but then also give you a lot of the context and background of the discussion. Do you feel that that's going well? You're getting the information that you are interested in?
Definitely. It's, the follow-through. Our staff are outstanding, and we try to thank them every day because we so appreciate, I know in fact, even Nicole came back from Sisters. Yes! Thank you, Nicole. I mean, really, they're really brilliant and they really care about what they do. And so I feel like they try and keep us all, as informed as possible.
I'm glad to hear you say that. A couple times we've had the staff kind of summarize back what we said, and it's like verbatim, and we're like, whoa, that's
They're
that's
really good
amazing.
at that, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot believe all the text messages I've gotten from people back there, like telling me, Patty Water, look at this, or something else, you know, it's like, they're so, always so responsive. Truly, it's appreciated.
And thank you so much to the members of the Planning Commission for processing those issues for us and you know, processing, distilling, and making very sound recommendations.
The fact that we hadn't had this joint meeting for 28 months, I think it's pretty remarkable that 28 months. So hopefully we can have the next one. When is the next one going to be, Peter? Do we have any idea, a joint one?
You know, in the past, we've had them annually. You know, this was, to my knowledge, this is the latest we've had one in a calendar year. It's in, I think, you know, one of the benefits of February, of checking in the kind of early winter, is we're in the midst of our work program and should have some noticeable deliverables with others in process. And then we're beginning to look out into the subsequent, you know, fiscal year. And so that provides, I think, a rich dialogue amongst the two commissions. Here we are with this one, and again, this one, as I recall, is being somewhat later in the year. We're writing out the fiscal year. We're looking up, you know, at the work plan that's just been approved. And I think this has been a very healthy conversation, but I have found those that are in, like, you know, February and March are pretty beneficial, because we've absorbed those work planning tasks. We have some things to talk about. There's some reflections. There's a legislative session which will be happening. You're tracking what that affords. You know, the last one we had, as Commissioner DeBono, we were talking about non-prime resource lands. So it made for a very dynamic set of topics. And so I think there's really advantages of checking back in on the, you know, as you turn the corner in the new calendar year, because we've had 6 months of reflection, approximately 6 to 8 months of reflection, and it gives you that ability to kind of look ahead as we approach the next fiscal year. So those are some thoughts as we try to get back into our normal routine. Again, COVID didn't help matters.
Oh, one thing I just realized, I would love for all of our employees in the back of the room to stand up, identify themselves, what you do, and how long you've been with the county, if you wouldn't mind. I know I haven't mentioned all of you, and Peter, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So anyway, if you can do that, that would be so nice, because you are truly part of our team.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start out. So I'm your planning manager, Will Groves. I've been here for 17 years. On my way to my 18th, and it's a pleasure to serve. I've been here under a number of boards, a number of planning commissions, and I just love how, I mean, each of you are spending your own personal time. Sometimes some night you could do the rodeo. Showing up here to, you know, to really take care of the people of Deschutes County, and it's really important to me. And the care that you've given to staff and the support that you've given to us has been enormous, and we all deeply appreciate it.
Well, we deeply appreciate you all. So, Tanya, do you want to just give us a little?
I'm Tanya Saltzman, Senior Long Range Planner. I've only been here a little over 4 years, but I'm grateful for just the support from the board and the Planning Commission, and it's been a two-way street in terms of educating ourselves together, and I really appreciate that, and I think I feel very comfortable with all of you, and I just really appreciate that. I'd also just really briefly like to thank Trevor. This is his last day.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
There you go. And my favorite cake is flourless chocolate.
Okay. Let me write that down. I have a recipe for that one, too. Oh, boy.
Peter Russell, I'm your Senior Transportation Planner. I worked for ODOT for 13 years. Came out of county, so I'm starting my 16th year in Deschutes County. I have no feelings left. So, your last transportation system plan, basically what I do is it's split between long range and current planning. So if somebody's developing land use next to a county, I determine if they need to do a traffic study. They have to do any mitigation, their transportation system development charges might be. I make people happy every day with that. And then also I do long range planning. So I'm involved in the transportation system plan, the Tumwater community plan, and then other duties as assigned, like no shooting districts, noise variance permits, and a host of road naming, a host of other quirky things. So that's kind of what I do.
Thank you for 16 years, and please let me know about your cake later. Okay. What? Apple, okay.
I'm Kyle Collins. I am an associate planner, also in the long range division, like everyone here pretty much. Been at the county for almost 5 years now. Next month, I think it's actually my 5th year. I have kind of slowly but surely become the wildfire and water person. That's mostly what you hear me talking about. Talking to all you. You all have great discussions. Everything's very engaging. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, Kyle.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Mardell. I'm a senior long-range planner as well with the Community Development Department. I've been on board with Deschutes County for a little over 2 months, but in the region, including a previous term with Deschutes County since 2017, so a little over 5 years. My favorite part about planning is the community engagement element. So I love coming to planning commission meetings, and I especially love a lot of the community engagement we'll be able to do as part of the comprehensive plan. So yeah, I'll be probably talking to you quite a bit about the comprehensive plan, Sisters Trails update, and working with Peter, Tarek, Kyle, the whole team on the Tumalo community plan as well. So thank you for your time and all of your efforts tonight.
And I'm Tarek Rawlings. I'm an associate planner with the Long Range Division. And thank you, Commission and the Board of Commissioners, for all of your opportunities and all the experience speaking and working with you. I've worked on like population statistics. I help with current planning because they're kind of swamped right now. But we've done a lot of, I kind of like piecemeal a lot of zone change and plan amendments and sort of long range, sort of kind of currently treated. They're treated almost like sort of moving along as current files, but lots of big sort of future changes for zoning districts and plan amendments. And so a lot of those things are kind of coming up, but we'll be doing mostly like Tumalo community plan things. That's what I'm primarily working on right now. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Oh, Tarek, how long have you been with the county?
Just over 4 years, same as Tanya.
Don't say just over. Thankfully, you've been here 4 years. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, my gosh. No, are we so lucky, though, really? What a great group of people that work for the county. We are lucky. So thank you for loving Deschutes County. I know you must go out there and recreate and have fun, and that's why we live here, right?
Before we close, could I just flag one thing?
Could I just ask, Matt, did you want to say anything? You got to sit here tonight. Is there anything you wanted to say?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm just taking in all the discussion and got lots to do coming up.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Chang.
So there was a whole lot of mention of water tonight. And I don't know how much the Planning Commission has dug into all of the analysis and the data and research on water in the region. But there are two pieces that I particularly think are relevant to some of the issues that we discussed tonight. Number one, the Water Resources Department has done a study of groundwater decline in the Deschutes Basin that spans decades, and no surprise, groundwater levels have declined significantly, 10, 20 feet in some places, in the last 2 decades. And not only do they document that, but they also give some, they also dig into the reasons for that. And those might be of interest to people. The spoiler or teaser, 5/8 of the problem is climatic. It's basically just precipitation up in the mountains is not what it used to be, and so the Cascade Mountains that charge groundwater in the Deschutes Basin, not at least on this side of the Deschutes Basin, is not keeping up with supply demand. I'll leave the other 3/8 for you guys to research or to learn about from that report if you're interested in that. The other piece I'd really like to mention is the Upper Deschutes Basin study. That was a comprehensive an analysis that was done by a whole bunch of stakeholders here over, I think that the basin study was completed in 2018, which basically, the real oomph or value of that that analysis was helping us understand where we're going to find the water we need to increase our water supply reliability for the region, particularly for agriculture, but also for domestic and municipal use in the future. And the spoiler on that, or teaser on that, the key places to look for new water are conservation within agriculture through irrigation canal piping and on-farm efficiency and lateral piping. And then we also need to do some things with markets and leasing to be able to move water around in the basin as you free up water through conservation to be able to get it to the places where it's needed. So, if we're thinking about how do we weave kind of water supply security considerations into our planning, either through the comprehensive plan or other means, I would highly recommend that there be a session where you dig into those, dig into some of those studies that have been done, because it really frames the way I think we should be thinking about these issues.
We were lucky enough to have, we had a water panel series just recently, maybe a couple months ago or so, a month ago. So we had it was 2 parts, and Kyle set it up for us. Shout out to Kyle. But actually, I found it incredibly informative. The presenters were excellent. I think we all learned a ton. Lots of technical information. And the intent, if I understand it, was for us to get sort of a head start on thinking about these issues for the comprehensive plan update, where we're going to be talking hopefully a ton about water. And then we actually had one 4 years ago when I had just joined the commission, and I think I came in the middle of that one, so I was like, what is happening? But I learned a lot at that one too. This one was really, really well done.
We dug deeply into it, although new information keeps coming up.
That's true, yeah.
So I really applaud your thought, and Peter and Nick previously put together panels and a variety of things. So one thing, of course, we understand is that the county and the planning commission doesn't have much to say about regulation and water rights and those kinds of things. But what we do about planning and development and those things may have lots of impacts.
And it's important to understand, I mean, if this couple of decades long groundwater decline continues, it's important to think about the land use implications of that.
And where the population is going, I mean, somewhere there's a disaster.
Right, I mean, even Commissioner Williams' point about the ADU situation is coming up soon, but you were already thinking about how that's going to affect the water in your area.
Absolutely. We could probably learn a little bit from Las Vegas, and I don't remember the statistics, but last week I saw that maybe in the last 10 years, the population of Las Vegas has increased 10%. Their water consumption has decreased 13%. They're being so efficient. And being a big city, it's very different because it's maybe a lot easier for reclamation and resourcing. But one of the things they had done was, and I don't know if LA did this recently too, but
Well, they've turned the water off in LA. You can water
yeah,
like
they
1 day a
basically have,
week,
but
and
Las Vegas is basically saying, unless it's just a small patch of grass in your yard, resorts can't have just big swaths of grass, and that's really helping too. So there are going to be ways we can figure this out. But personally, my mom would like to pipe water from South Carolina to here because they're constantly in near flood. So.
We got some commissioners over in Tillamook County who would be happy to share some flood flows.
And actually, we need to get the water to the North Unit because we need the food, and those people truly need the water. So, yeah, I know.
One thing I would like to say, kind of in response to concerns about domestic water supply, something that you can learn from the basin studies. The total municipal domestic uses of water in the Deschutes Basin is 2%, and 85–90% of the water usage is for agriculture. And so, as, you know, what I try to say to people on a regular basis is, you know, the big low-hanging fruit in terms of where we can conserve water and free up water is in agriculture. Those are things we can do without taking, you know, without depriving people of their production capacity, but, you know, just to get every drop that's diverted for agriculture actually to crops as opposed to leaking out bomb canals or, you know, evaporating in the air and things like that.
Commissioner DeBonne, did you want to add any other comments?
I said plenty tonight. It's great to see everybody.
Oh, and I do want to thank Kyle because he did send me several meetings about water, so he
Shout out to Kyle.
Anyway, we need to get you guys home. I so appreciate everyone coming tonight. Thank you to Nick, Peter, and the whole team, and our planning commission. Really great to get together. Sorry it's been 28 months, and we'll do it sooner next time, right? Great. Thank you all. And if you haven't let me know your favorite cake or pie, please do. Oh, tiramisu. Oh.
Yeah.
I have to show you a picture of my family's sawmill. It's at the High Desert.
Oh, okay.
The mill. My aunt said-